Good. Okay, hope you enjoyed that one. That was hiking in the Kennedy Ranges in Western Australia. Currently, I am still in Carnarvon. I'm chilling out in the hire car that I use to get out to the Kennedy Ranges. Currently pulled up in one of the caravan parks, and I've got my tent set up just behind the camera over there. But yeah, sitting in my car to get that nice and crispy audio. So a little bit more about the hike itself. Now there's two main reasons towards why I wanted to do this trail, and the first one being the most obvious in that the Kennedy Ranges are absolutely spectacular. The second reason is because this is my first hike that I have had to fly to get to the trailhead. I really wanted to test myself and not become so reliant on my own personal vehicle in doing all of these hikes that I'm currently punching out. So I figured this one was far enough away where I had to fly or drive 14 hours, but I figured it was also close enough that it still felt like home. So what I did was booked a return flight from Perth to Carnarvon for about $400. Ended up getting to Carnarvon at about 9:30 in the morning, where I jumped in my hire vehicle. This cost me $197.58 for the 2 days rental, and I'm figuring I'm going to be paying about another $80 or $90 on top of that because the mileage only covered 200 kilometers. Anything over 200 kilometers was about, I think it was 20 cents per kilometer. So yeah, I figured I'd be paying another $80 or $90 on top of what I had already paid. So left Carnarvon at about 10 o'clock-ish, got to Kennedy Ranges at about 1 o'clock, where I started my hike. So the first day was relatively short, being from about 1:30 to 4 o'clock-ish by the time I got to the campsite. Started at Sunrise Point and quickly worked my way to Honeycomb Gorge. Was pretty blown away with how spectacular that was. And fun fact, apparently that honeycomb sort of texture you see is from the seasonal waterfall, and just the splash over time erodes that surface and yeah, kind of creates that awesome honeycomb texture that you see. From there, hike down to Temple Gorge Campground, which is $11 per adult to stay the night. There is basic facilities there, including a long drop and a couple of water tanks. Personally didn't test out whether there was any water in those tanks, as I did have enough with me. But I'd imagine in summer these have the real possibility of running dry because it can get so hot out there. But in saying that, the ranger may or may not come out and top those up. But I figured that's something just to keep a note of. The second day, got up bright and early at 4:30 in the morning to tackle the Escarpment Trail. The plan was to get on top of the Kennedy Ranges just before sunrise, and I timed it to absolute perfection because I'd only been sitting for about 5 minutes and the sun started just poking its head above the horizon, and it was really a special moment when I got to see the sunlight kissing the face of the Kennedy Ranges and really making it glow that bright orange. So I got the drone up for a little bit and tried to capture some of that amazing scenery and some of those incredible views. But after that, I decided to put all of the camera gear away, and I just sat on the cliffside there for about half an hour, really just admiring the view and trying to soak up the moment as much as possible. I probably won't be back to the Kennedy Ranges for a very, very long time, if ever. I'd like to think I will be back there at some time in the future, but yeah, really just wanted to burn the image that I was seeing into my memory. Even though I've got all this on video, it's just one thing trying to take it all in and remember what you're seeing. So I was really just trying to spend that time and soak it all up as much as possible. After that, descended back down the escarpment and knocked out Drapers and Temple Gorge. In my opinion, I found Drapers Gorge a fair bit more interesting. Not too sure whether that's because I'd just been on the highs of being on top of the escarpment, but in my opinion it was a little bit more narrow and a little bit more interesting stuff to see than Temple Gorge. So if you're a little bit struck for time, I would recommend doing Drapers Gorge over Temple Gorge. Nevertheless though, they were still both great hikes, and yeah, really recommend doing both of them if you do get the time. In terms of food, all I really packed was some cashews and some muesli bars. Also had a Go Native meal and a little pack of 2-minute noodles, and that was more than enough for me. For water, all I packed was 3.7 litres. 3 litres of that was in my water bladder, and 700 mils was in my Catadine B3 water bottle. By the end of the hike, I still had about 700-800 mils left of water in the bladder. And to be completely honest, I was a little bit surprised by how much water I still had left. It was quite hot when I was doing the trail at about 28-29 degrees for the consecutive days. So I was expecting to use a little bit more than that. That's also including the 700 mils that I used to pour into my jet boil and cook up the 2-minute noodles and Go Native meals. If you're looking at doing the exact trail that I did, as always, I will link it in the description below. It's got all the elevation and GPS tracking data that you will ever need, so feel free to check that one out. But overall, I would rate the hike as easy to medium. More so on the medium side if you're doing it in the shoulder seasons or when it's a little bit warm. Personally, I did it when it was 28-29 degrees, and I would have serious reconsiderations if it was any warmer than that. Walking through the gorges when it was that warm, I could really feel the heat radiating off the rock, and yeah, any warmer than that, I would seriously think twice about doing that hike. Other than that, there's not too many difficult sections. By far the hardest part would be the Escarpment Trail as you're hiking to get on top of the Kennedy Ranges. But in my opinion, even if you consider yourself unfit, I reckon you could tackle this one and you will be rewarded with the most amazing views. It's one thing to actually see it in video, but to actually sit there with your feet dangling over the cliffside and admiring those jaw-dropping views, that is something that will sit with you for a very long time. But on another note, that's probably enough rambling from me. I am super keen to jump in the shower, having not had one for a couple of days now. So until I throw up another video, I will see you in the next one.